Today is Alien Day, and to celebrate, Creative Assembly, the studio behind Alien Isolation, one of, in my opinion, the greatest horror games ever made, just posted a teaser for the upcoming Alien Isolation 2. Now, while there isn't a ton of information in this trailer, it is very short. I do think that Creative Assembly are being very clever here in what they're showing, and I do think they are giving us some nice big teasers if you know where to look. I also think this trailer potentially proves one of my theories about the second game correct, and I think that Creative Assembly are giving us a very specific clue that I want to talk about. So let's jump into the trailer and let's have a look. So as I said, there isn't a ton of information here. These doors open to what looks like a colony. Now you might recognize this. It does look very similar to Hadley's Hope, the place where the second movie took place. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But apart from that, it opens up and we see this iconic save station. This was a big part of the first game, the save mechanic. It was a very unique mechanic in which you would have these save stations, which were essentially emergency phones. And every time you got close to one, if there was an enemy nearby, it would beep. Not only was this fantastic for the tension, but it made something so simple as a save mechanic made it feel more immersive. It made it feel a real part of this station. And every time you heard a save station coming up, not only did you think, oh great, I can save, but you also thought, oh great, there's something nearby. So on that point, it seems like this is Creative Assembly telling us that they are going to stay true to the vision of that first game. There are a number of reasons why Alien Isolation is touted as one of the best horror games ever made, and a lot of it is to do with the attention to detail. The small mechanics that are around the game that work really well together to produce a bigger picture is one of the great things of the game. So it's really nice to see Creative Assembly saying, yes, we are absolutely continuing that in this second game. Now, as I said, this area does look very similar to Hadley's Hope. That was a colony in the second movie, a Weyland-Yutani colony, and that was where the entire second movie took place. Now, the first Alien Isolation took board on Sevastopol, a station, and that was a big part of what made that game good as well. It was very dark, very cramped, and it was made to look exactly like it would fit in the Alien universe. But now that we see that this game is going to take place on some sort of colony world, it makes me think that they are going to make the second game much closer to Aliens, the much-loved sequel to the first movie. Now, if you haven't seen the movies, the first one and the second one are a bit different. The first one was essentially just a horror movie in space. There was one xenomorph that was slowly picking off all the crew, and we had one final girl in Ellen Ripley who managed to survive. That was basically the entire story of the first movie. In the second movie, though, the stakes were heightened. Ellen Ripley was asked to go with a group of colonial marines to a planet, and you might think she was going to be safe, but you quickly realize that all of these colonial marines with all of their guns were absolutely outmatched. Not only in the second movie was there more than one xenomorph, there was a whole hive of them, but the guns didn't really do all that much. The xenomorphs had massive numbers, they were so lethal that all of these badass marines just eventually died just like all of Ripley's crew did. Not only did we have the increased threat from the increased number of xenomorphs, but we also had the Queen. This answered a big question from the first movie of where did all of those eggs come from, and the answer that we got was, well, there's a giant xenomorph that can lay them, and this one's even more deadly than those smaller ones. So in a lot of ways, the second movie raised the stakes, and I think this is a big hint from Creative Assembly that they're going to do the same thing too. Now, on the one hand, this has me incredibly excited for the second game, but on the other hand, I also have some concerns. My first concern is that a lot of the Alien games that we get these days are very focused on action. This isn't exclusive to Alien games either. Many of the survival horror games we get these days are also very action focused. Now, one of the great things about that first game was that it was a true survival horror game. Yes, you could get weapons in the game, they didn't come till later on, and even when you did get them, they actually didn't work on the xenomorph. Even your most powerful late game weapons could only delay the attack from the xenomorph. They would save you a couple of times, but it didn't kill the xenomorph would come back. And of course, we know later on in the game, there turns out to be even more than one xenomorph, but you have weapons that you can use on the humans and the androids, but even those are very difficult to take down. So the game never felt like an action game. It felt like you were always surviving. You were never this badass Doom guy or Master Chief or anything like that. Leon Kennedy, you were a survivor. And so I really hope that the second game continues this, but as I said, they do seem to be hinting that they are continuing that legacy by showing off the save station. So I think that's a really good sign that they are going to do that. But I just know that these days, with every company trying to make as much money as possible, there is always that temptation to make a game more action focused. So it's just something I'm going to keep an eye on, but I really hope that they manage to strike a good balance between that survival horror and, as I say, raising the stakes for the second game. But this teaser on YouTube is actually called False Sense of Security, so it does seem like they are once again being very cheeky and naming it like that, showing that yes, this one might be set on a colony out in the open, out in the daylight, but don't let that fool you, this is absolutely still going to be a survival horror game. That's what I hope they're saying with that, but we'll have to wait and see. Another concern that I have is that it's been a very long time since Alien Isolation released. Alien Isolation released in 2014, been over 10 years since that game came out. So yet again, on the one hand, I hope that this massive gap between the two games means that this is the right time for them to make it. They're not just farming it out because the first game was popular, they're actually making it because they really want to make it and they think they're going to make it well. I also hope that that time between the two games has meant that this game has had enough time to cook, because too many games these days release half-baked, and I would hate to see an Alien Isolation sequel release in a buggy, broken state. I'm not saying that will happen, I'm just saying that these days that is something that happens so frequently, so I'm hoping that that time between these two games means that this one was given as much time as it needs to not only be as good as the first game, but hopefully surpass it. But again, on the other hand, this is now a completely different studio to the one that made Alien Isolation 1. Creative Assembly, like all of the big studios lately, has suffered from layoffs. They are also investing in things like AI, I'm sure, who knows. But I think it's pretty fair to say that this is a different team. So hopefully they can keep the spirit of that first game alive. And again, maybe even make it better. But I am going to wait until I see some gameplay trailers before I really get too excited for this one. Now, I do want to say this is really interesting that they are showing this looking like Hadley's Hope. I don't think this area is Hadley's Hope. Like I say, Hadley's Hope was the colony which the second movie took place, and this one seems to be referencing that. Even the rain here is an iconic part of that second movie. The first time we see the Colonial Marines and Ripley make it to the colony, it's raining, and it looks very similar in tone. So you might be thinking, could this be Hadley's Hope? And it absolutely could be Hadley's Hope. In the timeline of Aliens, Alien Isolation takes place between the first and second movie, and there was actually quite a large amount of time between those movies, because at the end of Alien, Ripley is in a cryopod, she's floating out, and she's supposed to be picked up by somebody within a few weeks. Now we learn in Aliens that it was actually many, many years later, which Alien Romulus actually gave us the reason why Weyland-Yutani did indeed pick up Ripley after a couple of weeks, but they kept her in stasis while they started doing experiments on the xenomorph. Then that station blows up and her cryopod is launched out into a random direction, which is why it's, I think, 60 or 70 years after she went to sleep that Ripley is eventually found. But Burke, in some versions of that movie, tells Ripley that her daughter grew up, got old, and died. Now, this might be a huge lie, because at the end of Alien Isolation, we leave Amanda Ripley, Ellen's daughter, in a situation that doesn't look great for her. But while she might have survived, if she is now roaming around again trying to figure out this mystery of Weyland-Yutani and the xenomorphs, then she might have made her way to Hadley's Hope. Hadley's Hope did get taken over by a whole hive of xenomorphs, and there is a big period of time between first contact and by the time that Ellen Ripley gets there. So this game could be on Hadley's Hope in between that time, in between that sort of void of information that we have. It would be really cool to finally see the sort of outbreak on Hadley's Hope and see what happened there, but I still don't think this is. If you look in the background here, you can see a bunch of trees, and Hadley's Hope, by the time that we see it in Aliens, is a planet that is being terraformed, but it seems to be quite early on in the process. We don't see any trees or vegetation or life at all on the planet, so I don't think this is Hadley's Hope, but I think that this is going to be a colony very similar to Hadley's Hope. And I think this is Creative Assembly hinting that the second game is going to be more tonally aligned with Aliens, which is again why I'm hoping they don't lean too much into the action, and I hope that they make it a true survival horror experience. But this does answer the big question of where is the queen? In the first Alien Isolation game, there was a queen aboard Sevastopol Station. You can hear it at some point, and you also know that there is a queen on board because you have all of the eggs in the hive. But we never actually see it. And I think that this game is going to show us a queen, and that's why this trailer shows what is basically a mirror of the start of Aliens to be like, hey, this time you're actually going to face off against a queen, which if this is a survival horror game, I don't know how that's going to work, but I'm kind of excited to see if they can do it. If they can do a big queen and still retain that survival horror, I'll be very, very happy. So that was my breakdown of this trailer. Not a lot of information, but I do think a lot of teasers, so we'll have to wait and see. Today is obviously Alien Day, so it makes sense for them to post a teaser, but the fact that they had it ready makes me wonder, are we going to get more information very soon? Are we going to get some proper trailers, maybe even a release date this year? I don't think the game is going to release this year, but if we get a release date soon, that'll be pretty cool. But let me know, are you excited for Alien Isolation 2? I personally can't wait. I'm a big fan of the first game, so I'm very excited to learn more information about it. But tell me what you think down in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.